Right, okay, let's get going on podcast number 2. Few subscribers, thank you very much indeed to all of you. I'm trying a slightly new layout with the camera. It's gone from portrait to landscape, so comments on that, whether it's better this way or if it's better the other way. Any input would be much appreciated. To anybody who has subscribed, thank you very much indeed. Welcome along. No comments yet, which is interesting. However, I value comments. Even if they're negative, doesn't matter to me. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all just a bit of fun, really. Just me shooting the breeze, as it were, talking about things I like, things that interest me. I'll try and avoid things like world politics because, that's a bit of a poop show at the moment, is it not? So, even local politics, not local politics, but national politics, not really worth getting hung up on. I've had a look back on that video, which I managed to do bizarrely in one take, and I'm going to try and do all of my podcasts in one take. I haven't quite got the hang of editing yet. I don't know if I ever will. I'm old. I don't know these things. One of my subscribers, who happens to also be my daughter, designed the logo for the podcast, which I can only thank her very much for. So that will appear at the beginning of each segment, at the beginning of each podcast, and also at the end, hopefully, so that it gives me something to do. Okay, so what I'm going to be looking at today, hopefully, is, I mentioned a few of my likes and dislikes in the last one. Not that many. I didn't go through absolutely everything. I'm just hoping the main thing you got from all of that is I absolutely hated school. Okay, and also something I never mentioned actually on the last one is I like tattoos. So yeah, if you like your tattoos or you want to show off your tattoos, but come along. Might be nice to get a few little clips of people's tattoos going through. Obviously, if they don't want their names mentioned, but little things like that. Tattoos. Had them for. Wow, when was my first one? When I was in the army, probably standard. 1986, 1987, around there. Dave long gone. They've been covered up by various other tattoos since. But again, at some point I will go through tattoos and take photos of mine and show them. But today what I want to really look at is something that really does interest me. I've got I mentioned it in the first podcast, was words, and also phrases. Words and phrases, their derivation and where they come from. And there are a number of people out there that write rather wonderful books on the subject. Tom Reed Wilson was a name I couldn't remember last time. I've got a couple of his books. I think he's fantastic. I saw him on a podcast with Joe Marler. And it's just wonderful. One of the best hour of viewing that I think I've had for a very long time. Highly entertaining. Joe Marler himself is highly entertaining. Seems like a really decent guy and comes across so well on these podcasts. And Tom Reed Wilson. So I've been reading his books, but the phrases I'm looking at today. Oh, by the way, yes, you probably noticed I'm wearing glasses as well for the more observant among you. I wasn't wearing glasses last time, but I need them for distance work, and I've actually got them on so that the picture I'm looking at when I look at the camera is slightly blurred, because being in landscape, the camera angle is slightly different, and I just thought by having glasses on I might not end up looking like that at the camera going, what do I look like, when I should actually be looking at you guys and talking to you, which I'm doing now, and it actually makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to look at a couple of words or phrases more than anything, and where they come from, which again is always quite interesting. So there's a number I've got written down, and if anybody has any more that they can show me or come up with, please put comments below. And we'll possibly revisit this again in either next time, at the beginning of next time, or on another podcast completely, but that would be good. I must admit, I thought talking to myself for any length of time would have been quite difficult, but as I've said possibly before, I can't remember, getting old, my memory's going. I have no problems with talking in front of people, in front of crowds. I've delivered presentations to rooms of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 people, right up to sort of 200-300 people, even more. So I really don't have a problem with that. But I always thought talking myself without, a slideshow presentation or anything like that would be quite difficult. I know there's a couple of comedians use them, that use slideshows to keep the whole flow going, and that's one of the things I'm very aware of, flow. Yes, I might ramble, and I'm not adverse to going off a tangent and talking about other things. If something suddenly pops up into this funny little mind of mine, then I will. Oops, sorry, covering the camera there. I'm just going to alter the angle there very slightly, or sit back a touch, one of the two. But anyway, sorry for the big pause in the way. Anyway, let's get on with it. So the first one I'm going to look into is the phrase "put a sock in it." Now, these phrases are still relatively in use, are still fairly common. So if you've ever wondered what the phrase "put a sock in it" or where it comes from and what it means, it is literally that, is to put a sock into something to make it quiet. And it's believed that it comes from when gramophones first became commonplace. They had these great big, you've probably seen the pictures, you may even have had one in your house at some stage, the old windy up, put the record on, lever over, and you've got these great big trumpets sticking out that would, the sound would come out, but they had no volume control. So people used to say, put something in it, put a sock in it to deaden the sound. So there you can see where that one works quite nicely and is still very, very relevant today, to put a sock in it to quieten down. There was one I saw, and I debated whether to use it, but this will tell you a little bit about me. Is the word "testify"? Now, I haven't fact checked this one, but it did make me chuckle. Now, the word "testify" comes from, allegedly, and I will look into this, but it just popped into my mind, and I said I will mention things like that. It popped into my mind that the word "testify" comes from the Greeks, that to have an agreement between two people, they would stand and hold each other's testicles, and make the agreement, so that nothing was then missaid during the not the argument, but the arrangement of of whatever it is they were agreeing to. The contract, sorry, that's the word I couldn't come up with then. The contract between them wasn't changed mid-flow or mid-sentence because they had each other by the testicles, and that's apparently where the word "testify" comes from. It just made me chuckle. I just imagine modern day politicians standing in Parliament, hanging onto each other's knackers and having an argument. How that will work with women, I don't know. I think it's only Trump has done that sort of thing. But there we go. Controversial, but we'll leave that there. Okay, so another one, start from scratch. Now this was an interesting one. Start from scratch and drop of the hat, or drop of a hat. So again, two fairly common phrases that are used fairly liberally. I mean, I've heard them many times over the years. I mean, if you've never heard any of these phrases, it's an education. If you have, you might already know this, but it's just, I find this sort of thing very interesting. But starting from scratch is where they used to have running races, so ad hoc running races and other races where the track would either be in a field or on a path or on a cinder track, and they would literally scratch a line in the floor with their foot, or somebody's foot would scratch a line, and that would be the start point. So start from scratch, so you'd start from the scratch in the ground. And the drop of a hat was the way of starting the race. So again, before not everybody has a loud device to start a race. A gentleman would raise his hat and drop it down, much like they do with starting races with flags, etc., or lights nowadays and starting pistols. But it was a go at the drop of a hat. So at the drop of a hat, people go. And again, that's where the derivation of that comes from. Again, I found that quite interesting. Whether you guys do or not, I don't know. Spill the beans. Spilling the beans. Modern day, again, means to... secrets, is to let out a secret. So spill the beans. Again, this seems to, a lot of these things seem to come from the Greeks, where votes for politicians or for most things were done with the use of black and white beans. So were private. So you were given a black bean and a white bean, and you would either vote for contestant A or contestant B. So obviously A would go into one pot, B would go into another. And if you unfortunately knocked the container over, it was spilling the beans, thus giving away potentially the result of the election or whatever it was you were voting for. So you were giving away the answer or the information that was supposed to be hidden. So spill the beans, again, still means very much the same thing. If you spill the beans on someone, you're a snitch, you're a grass, you're a tattletale. Maybe you need to even look into those words later on and find out what they mean. Excuse me. Bite the bullet. Again, this is still in common use. Bite the bullet. If you have to do something that's, you've got to bite the bullet here and get on with it. To endure something, to push yourself a little bit. Bite the bullet. Now, where this is believed to come from is from war times, where painkillers weren't freely available to soldiers or to anybody having any sort of surgery or having any form of work done on them. So, if you've got a really nasty wound or if you've been shot or had something blown off, that's pretty graphic. Because they had very little painkillers, you were given a bullet to bite down on. Now, a bullet is the head of a bullet is a relatively soft material, can be relatively soft. But yes, that's where the derivation of bite the bullet comes from. So a bullet was put between their teeth for them to bite down on to help them deal with pain. Sorry, a little demonstration there. Now, the next one I want to move on to is raining cats and dogs. Again, now this is one I've obviously heard the phrase many, many times over my lifetime. However, I've never, ever known where it came from. Or, in fact, actually saying that, I read up on it, and again, I did check this one. And it then came to me that I possibly had heard this before, but in the depths of my memory, I don't really remember. Raining cats and dogs. Obviously, a long time ago, most houses would have been thatched. Even in towns and villages, would have had thatch. Relatively cheap at the time material, easily grown and harvested. So they would have had thatched roofs. Now, thatched roofs, if anybody out there has a thatched roof, can be incredibly warm and waterproof. So animals, cats, dogs, rats, mice, anything like that would tend to live, and still do, in fact. I mean, you have problems with rats and squirrels with modern day thatches if you don't use the correct netting, etc., etc. So cats, dogs, animals would get in, or small animals would get into the thatch to keep warm and dry and safe. However, when it rained, the thatch becomes quite slippery, or would become quite slippery, and hence the animals would then start to lose their purchase and would slide down and end up in the street. So hence the phrase, it's raining cats and dogs, because it was rain. We say raining cats and dogs now to mean it's really heavy, really bad. It's absolutely tipping down. It's raining cats and dogs, or steroids. That's another one. I don't know where that one comes from. Might look into that one. But raining cats and dogs, yeah, it comes from thatched roofs and things literally falling from the roof because they couldn't hold on because it was slippery. If anybody believes any of these are wrong, or they've got heard slightly different versions, then I'm very, very happy to listen to those. Okay, I'm going to move on to One I did know. Now this is one I've been aware of for a very long time. Is board, as in I'm going full board on holiday or half board on holiday. Where the term full and half board comes from. Now again, this comes from the days of stage or coaches when we used to travel everywhere by horse and coach, and you'd turn up at a coaching inn, and depending on how wealthy you were or how much money you had on you at the time, you were either given full board, which meant you had a full meal and or a full number of meals, breakfast, lunch, whatever it was, dinner, tea, whatever you want to call it. We'll go talk about breakfast, lunches, dinners and teas and what they should be, but anyway, there we go. But half board meant you didn't have very much money, so you were literally given a board to carry that you would eat off, because relatively easy to have a load of boards around and to then use to eat off or to put your food on. So you'd have a full board or half a board, depending on how much money you had. So that's where that one comes from. Another one along those same lines is hungover or hangover. Again, low cost, incredibly low cost renting of a room or somewhere to sleep for the night would literally be a room with ropes going across the room. So you would pay whatever it was, pennies, dimes, cents, whatever it was at the time, or wherever you lived in the world. You would go into the room and you would sit on the floor, and to save you lying down on the floor, you would hang yourself over the rope. So that was called a hangover or hungover. It then started being used, or that type of accommodation, because it was so cheap and because it was so cheerful, was then used more by drunks. So it then became synonymous with a hangover accommodation with drunk people. So that's where that comes from. The next one is under the weather. Now, I've read this one and I will mention it, but again, if anybody knows, and I did look into it, and it was a bit vague, this one, but it seems to be that under the weather, meaning you're not very well, or I don't feel very well, I'm a bit under the weather. And where that comes from is potentially it comes from the sailor years of when we had ships travelling all over the world, the old tall ships with the masts and the sails, and we, poor old sailors in those days were treated very poorly. Very poor nutrition, very poor accommodation, and so they would fall ill quite readily. So when they fell ill, certainly if they were in places like the tropics or the Caribbean where it was incredibly hot, it wasn't good for them to stay upstairs, so they were told to stay under the weather or in the hold or in the accommodation, to stay under the weather. Slightly tenuous link, that one. I think it's quite difficult to understand that one, but that's where they believe it comes from. You've got to stay under the weather by being undercover. Why they didn't just say undercover, I don't know, but it's staying under the cover. Under the weather. Sorry, spilled the beans. Another. Right, for the kids there. Any kids listening? I'm pretty sure. I think that I've got a few. I say a few. I know at least my grandchildren are listening to this. But we got piss poor and doesn't have a pot to piss in. Now again, just kind of, I think doesn't have a pot to piss in is an old phrase. It's not one I hear very often, and I must admit it's quite a long time since I've heard the phrase piss poor. But again, this comes from going back to Victorian times, where in the low-income areas, in fact, the slums of the cities of this country, people used to scrape a living. They would make a living from whatever it was, and some people used to go around and collect urine in pots. So urine in pots, and they would then, which was then used for tanning, as in not as in the old Essex glow, the orange people. It was used for tanning leather. So the process of tanning leather to turn it from a skin into leather used urine. So these people used to go around, collect urine, and so they were piss poor. They were that poor they had to go and collect piss. So that's where that comes from. And if they were even poorer, they didn't even have a pot to piss in. So that's where that is. It comes from. So again, interesting that these things have an etymology to them. They have a meaning and a background. Yeah, those are the ones I've put down for today. Those are the ones that really their word, phrase, and origin. Sorry, I have to take my glasses off. I'm just very quickly looking through my list because I think I've done them all. Yes, I have. And there are many more out there. I mean, if anybody's got any they would like me to look into, if you want to leave a comment, I'd be quite happy to go into that. Yeah, so that's it. The derivation of those phrases. So personally, I find that very interesting. I like where things come from, the meaning behind them, because most of them, the will do. I think there's probably, in fact, I know there's a whole load behind horse racing and gambling and dog racing and other things like that. So there's a whole host of these things. I'm not going to keep doing this every podcast. I will. My next one will be about something else. If anybody's got any ideas of what they'd like me to talk about or look into and review or look at, that would be fantastic. And you can then next time come and join me in the Star Wars crew. Yeah, I know it's the baddie right behind me, but he does figure quite heavily around here. But yeah, I wouldn't say he's my favourite. But anyway, slightly digressing there. However, I'm going to leave it there for now. Thanks again, everybody who has listened. I do appreciate it, listening to an old man rambling on, and I do really appreciate everybody who subscribes. I'm hoping to do this again in a couple of days, and I might talk about something like rugby, or Star Wars will definitely be on the cards at some point, but I don't want to scare too many people off too early on with that one. And then another one to say will be cycling. There's going to be a whole host of things. The one I didn't mention, I don't think I did in my first podcast, is my love of birds, the feathered variety, before anybody says anything. And my tattoos are all my tattoos are of a bird of some type or other. So I've got, on my hands, etc., etc. Again, I'll go through that at some time. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching. And look, I managed to do that all in a one. I've impressed even myself. I feel like I could keep on talking, but you've probably all fallen asleep by now. Anyway. Nice to be back. I'm enjoying doing this. I will probably explain next time why I'm doing this. Obviously, my family know why, but I will let the rest of you know at some point. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your today, which is Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you're having a Sunday lunch, have a good one. Can't beat a good old Sunday roast, can you? With Yorkshire pudding and roast potatoes, gravy, and all the rest of it. Delicious. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. See you all soon. Bye for now.